host of this?
Yeah, you're hosting. I
Wow.
probably he made it so we kind of all are, but like it's just easier if you do. I got a new
Nice.
microphone, guys. It's called the Snowball.
So would you like me to bring Kip on?
Please do.
All right. Come on, Kip.
I'll introduce Kip.
You got a snowball. It's like 100 degrees.
That's the point, Tony.
I will take a snowball right now.
All right, so we got Kip coming in here. He's coming in live too as well. So Tony, give us a little background on what you do and you know, just kind of, you know, what your role is and things you oversee and what you do on a daily basis.
All right. Well, I started out as a livestock hauler, moved into steel hauler, moved into quality, then management and shipping. Company change, employer change. I'm still in management and shipping. We run a small fleet, 15, 18 trucks, 2 or 3 different plants, supplying the RV factories with the materials to build their product.
A lot of local stuff, correct?
Mostly local.
But high volume.
That's what I was going to ask.
High volume.
I was going to ask, Tony, what's the volume of what you're doing? What are you seeing on a daily out of your...
Probably in the 1.5 million pounds a day, all in, outbound.
What did you tell
only.
me the other day? You were like 1 million pounds behind or something. You're so swamped.
Yeah,
like
work is busy. Yeah, everybody's buying campers. It's a good thing to do.
It's perfect,
social distancing.
Actually. Yeah, it is.
Awesome. And then we got is Kip on?
He is.
Yeah,
Kip,
I am.
can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Of course.
We got you. You out?
Okay.
You out by the pool tonight, Kip?
No, I'm out Ubering my granddaughters around.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Are they paying? Are they paying you for these services? Or are you doing it out of the kindness of your heart?
I think I have to pay them to be allowed to do it.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your background, Kip. You know, what you've been involved in, what you've done supply chain wise.
Well, my most recent stint was with a injection molder out of Montpelier, Ohio, supplying to heavy truck, about 95% of our sales. Managed to spend at about 100 million, including freight. A lot of ours is outbound, but the not much weight really. We talk more in truckloads, probably loading anywhere from 35 to 50 truckloads a day out of the facility.
Nice.
Good size.
And you also had, I mean, you guys did a little bit of expedites here and there, right?
Unfortunately, yeah, I have experience at expediting.
Yeah.
What freight guy doesn't?
Right.
Yeah. Anything from chartering to a van or a car, or actually I flew an associate to Laredo, Texas one time with a box full of parts.
Yep.
Just to get it there, yeah.
But it needs to be there. It needs to be there. So
That's
how long
right.
have you been in our world, Kip?
Well, longer than TJ's been on the earth.
Easy.
Yeah.
You've guided me so far.
Yeah. Let's just this reference point. I worked in an automotive supplier years ago. I was there when they first started broadcasting EDI on a thermal transfer fax machine.
Wow.
Wow.
I don't even know where to begin processing that in my brain on how that all went down.
That was when it was like an actual physical supply chain. Like that's how the
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, we have some questions that we've aligned really for our shipper panel. We have some people. I don't know if we would love to see if we can get some comments. I don't think I see any of those from anyone right now coming in, but we would love to have some questions and some comments from the audience. And I actually was going to bring up one of the questions that we did get earlier today from Dan Gallagher. So he had a question for Tony, and we would love to hear a response from Kip as well. And he wanted to understand if you guys are starting to see more damage and service failures from all of your common carrier LTL shipments. He said, I've been seeing this from carriers and to and from every zip in the country. Speaking with carrier reps, they are blaming COVID, which I understand to some extent, but I've never seen this many damages and service failures across the board.
I have received the COVID excuse for a truck that was an hour away until tomorrow because he had symptoms. And I thought, where in the world are you going to get a test at a truck stop an hour away from our location and be available tomorrow that you already are aware of? Same two guys.
Yeah.
And they were available tomorrow. I think, although it's a legitimate excuse, I really believe that it's being used as an illegitimate excuse. As far as the carriers, though, direct carriers, we haven't seen a lot of that. I think there was probably some maintenance issues during March and April, May maybe, where people weren't running trucks and they sat. I had some in our fleet that sat, and then we started running it just a couple weeks ago, and all kinds of issues, NOx sensors, that kind of stuff. The heating element in the NOx sensor goes out, and then it just doesn't work. You get engine light, and the truck derates, and then you're on the side of the road with a tow truck. But we got some stuff like that taken care of. But so yeah, if the truck sat, there's probably some issue with that mechanically. I'll bet there's a lot of trucks that sat for a month or two that are now running hard, and probably should have been done a little bit better maintenance while they were down, had the opportunity.
So are you doing any LTL, Tony or Kip, or either one of you?
We do a little bit of LTL, but not a ton. And we haven't had any issue with that other than your, what did they call it? With the hubs that were regulated or derated. I don't know. There was some hubs that were not taking in any more freight for a day or two.
Yeah.
You guys all know what that's called. There's a term and I can't remember it.
Kip?
But I haven't had any problems with that so far.
Okay.
Have you seen any issues, Kip, with them when capacity gets tight? With obviously you're going to get more excuses, but with increased claims and damages.
Yeah, I think part of that is, and I indirectly blame it on COVID because of the supplemental federal employment insurance, that ended in July. I think that caused a lot of problems because why is somebody going to come to work when they can stay home and make more money than they can working?
Yeah.
And then so you end up with a lot of new people trying to fill those roles that maybe had forklift experience or didn't when you're talking LTL, because there's an immense amount of cross docking depending on the length of the LTL shipment. We had some suppliers that would ship from Michigan to our facilities in Texas, and when freight's on the road for 4 days and, it's cross-docked 3 or 4 times in between, there's a lot of potential for damage. And I think with COVID, there was a lot of experienced people that, one, either got taken out of the workforce or opted out because they got paid more to stay home than they did to work.
Yep.
And the rumor I just heard the other day is Ohio's compounding that, because when the federal supplement ended, Ohio, they implemented, and they're paying people an extra $300 to stay home. So, states continue to do that. It's going to take a while for some of these folks to get experienced, and you're going to see damage and lost freight and those type of things.
Yeah, and I know there's that, of course, but also I think with the increased production, I mean, how much of that goes into just the carelessness of how fast you're trying to push push that much freight out, and you know, the volumes are higher, and you know, it's a little more stress, maybe longer hours as well. And then, you know, combined with new people, I think that's probably a big thing that can harm that.
It's happening everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I know we've dealt with it too, I mean, there was a lot of drivers that, and we've talked about this before, that you know, took some of those PvE loans and sat on that and didn't work. And that caused a little bit of the you know, capacity issue as well, you know. And then once they do come out there, they didn't take care of their trucks because they weren't making any money when they were running during COVID, and now they're all breaking down. And so I think, you know, you see freight literally breaking down and trucks literally breaking down because it's just it went from nothing to a ton, you know, in such a short time. But you know, I think a lot of that, you know, comes down to, and I think you guys would agree, maybe having those carrier relationships, right? We've talked about that, and you know, certain carriers that you know, are there and do things correctly, or, you know, handle the claims. I mean, Kip, have you had some go-to carriers that have helped you out when it comes to that type of thing, when it comes to the loading, unloading, and claim issues?
Yeah, they're most of what we were able to do with is we negotiated long-term contracts or annual contracts with our LTL carriers, and then also with our whatever truckload freight we were paying, which is basically inner site for us, going back and forth between our facilities. So, I mean, we're able to circumvent some of it by doing that, by negotiating those longer term agreements and working with the carriers. So,
I got a question for you, Kip.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah.
Do you guys did you have a private fleet?
No, we didn't have a private fleet. I would say that we had a good enough relationship with a carrier out of Defiance, Ohio, that at one time he offered to put our logo on the side of his trailers.
I'd say that's a pretty decent relationship.
A picture of you, Kip, or what?
Yeah, of course it'd be a picture of me. Who else would we put up there?
Exactly. Guys, I've known Kip now for almost 10 years. So we go back a long time, but I've learned a lot from him. He's very knowledgeable. So you'll hear me give him a hard time sometimes, but that's why.
So in regards to the brokerage side of things, I don't know. I don't do very much LTL. I have a couple of customers that go, can you please help me with this stuff? So I will do it from time to time. It's not something I want to do often, being an expediter, but what we've heard from some of our relationships with some of the companies out there, I guess a lot of brokers nowadays are not really aligning with the direct LTL lines. They're using more of the bigger concepts of like the Blue Grays, the Echoes, the kind of the bigger companies that are going out there. I can't even get the word out. What is that? What I'm trying to say, where they go out there and they actually get the pricing for you. And then you go on their portal and you do all the pricing type of deal. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Or am I looking crazy?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. You go out and bid every LTL shipment, and
right.
They have a pool of, and I can't remember the term, but we just never had, or I didn't feel like we had enough associate hours to go out and research and schedule every shipment. And some of the, most of our suppliers ship to us on a regular basis. So even shopping that a lot of times didn't compare to the discounted rate we were able to negotiate with bigger LTL carriers.
Enterprise brokers? Is that what I saw that in the comments? I don't know if that's correct. But
so I guess my point with that though is if brokers are utilizing those types of services to move LTL, one, you do not have a relationship with the actual LTL carrier. So whenever there is something that needs to get bumped off of a shipment, I'm going to assume that they're going to look at that bill of lading and go, oh, this is small company, blah, blah, blah. So I would assume that gets bumped. And then what I had been told, because we had a couple of instances where, our freight didn't pick up for 2 or 3 days. And every day when we're reaching out to our rep that is over all of these LTL companies, he would just state that they were coming into issues for COVID because there were so many places not open. So, or things that were getting returned or whatever that were not expected. So the normal capacity that would be riding on the LTL truck was already utilized for something else, or if shipper wasn't open, so they had this freight just sitting on their truck. And so it was delaying a lot of the shipments is what I had been told. But again, I don't live in the LTL world, so I wasn't sure if you guys had heard anything along the lines of that as well.
I'm sure that went on. And there again, back to the earlier question about more damage with LTL freight. Now you're pulling into a dock of a company you want to deliver freight, and you got to ask them to unload a half a trailer to get to their stuff and then put it back on.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Which would lead to those damage and lost freight. Because potentially they could pull 10 pallets off, get their freight, get busy, and only put 9 of them back on the truck, and there's really no record of it.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of that with some of our customers. We've got a customer that supplies bathtubs and fittings and fixtures to like all the Lowe's and Menards, and you get like a 26 stop shipment to all the Menards, and it's constant. They left a piece on here. They said they already had all they needed, so they put the piece back on, but it has to go back to them now because the manager found it on another sheet, and you're already 4 stops down the road, and it's not LTL, it's multi-stop full truckload, but it's because it's coming from the same producer, but they're so bogged down right now too. I mean, like they're so behind. I had put a post out the other day. We had saved a couple shipments for him, and got over there, and I had brought the shipper, because they were close to Fort Wayne, pizza and cooler pop and stuff. And the guy's like, I was like, hey, we were the ones that helped recover these. And he's like, God, I wish you wouldn't have. I really wish you wouldn't have recovered these shipments. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah. He's like, we're so far behind over here. He's like, all our sales guys and everybody, they're promising customers, all this, promising all this freight, and we just can't keep up. Like we can't. And they're just, you look at somehow how it's loaded, they're just throwing it in the truck. There's no order to it. It's just they're working over hours, and like you said, you're going to the back, going to the nose to get stuff for a stop, and having to go through everything, and some of it's not necessarily super solid, some of it's fragile. When you deal with that stuff, there's a lot of
I can tell you 99% of LTL claims are poor packaging from the shipper. That's been my experience.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, for sure. People put like one little band of shrink wrap, and they're like, okay, why does this look different when it showed up? I don't know, maybe you should wrap it. They don't put anything at the bottom around the base of the pallet, and then everything just goes whoosh.
Yep.
Yeah, and they don't,
a lot of LTL claims can be reduced or eliminated if your packaging is adequate.
And not only that, I mean, luckily, I've got some fairly veteran drivers that we had put on the first couple of loads, some of those multi-stoppers, and one thing they said was, did the customer not tell? I mean, they didn't even give us really much direction on what we needed. He's like, these trailers really honestly need, vertical, E-tracks. I mean, you got to have, vertical E-tracks at 4 foot, cross members when it comes there, because you got to be able to strap across. He's like, if you can't, you got to be able to have this and that. And he's going on and on about how it should be loaded and what the driver probably should have with him, what trailers should be used. And none of that's communicated. It's just, we need a dry van, and when we get there, we're going to throw it in and, slam our elbow down on it so it fits and send you on your way because Menards needs it. I don't know. It is one of those things. But, one thing I wanted to touch on real quick though, with, when it comes to, carrier relations and stuff with shippers, but when you're looking at, and Kip, I know I had a great conversation with you the other day. I thought it was really interesting, but when because as a supply chain guy too, you're dealing with the shipping, but you're also dealing with the purchasing, right? And that can go into, I think if you look at it from the inbound logistics too as well, it could you're getting a good cost savings there, it can allow you to pay a little bit more for a better carrier or be able to move things certain ways. But Kip, what were you were explaining the other day on a relationship you had built and something you had gone out and done with somebody that was, overseas, and you built it from that angle.
Oh, they're well, I had a supplier from Taiwan knock on our door, and I just kind of blew him off, or I talked to him for a little bit, and then my good friend Robert Mao wouldn't leave me alone, and he kept coming back, and they were supplying other parts as a tier 2 to heavy truck. And so I ended up developing a relationship with them, and migrated some of our smaller chrome plated plastic over there for them to produce and make, and it worked out well for us. And the big thing there I worked on the relationship with that supplier to the point where they flew me to Taiwan to see their facilities, and then we also worked for about a year on them trying to design and build a machine and run it in Texas for us. And while we were doing that, it was 2008, so it was near impossible for them to borrow any money to do that. So, but big key there was working on the relationship with that supplier, and they're still a supplier of CK today.
What I really thought was interesting on that is as carriers and brokers, and just freight forwarders, we talk a lot about that relationship, how to build that relationship with your customers, right? To get more freight, to have more opportunities. But when you really dive in, and I touched on my post yesterday a little bit, when you really dive in on supply chain, there's so much there. It's so cool to really look at now. That same shipper that you're trying to build that relationship with to get more freight is doing the same thing with their supplier, right? Because they're seeing it from all different angles. We're seeing it from one angle, and that outbound logistics, and they're doing the same thing, and it just goes to show even more, Nicole, you touched on your post on how relationships are so important on every level. Yeah. And when Kip told me that the last time I had talked to him, it hit me. It stuck with me. Like, it doesn't matter where you're at or what you're in, or what position you're in, or what side of the fence. Relationships matter that much to where you got to get innovative, right? You got to get it's 2008. You're designing a machine literally to do things like that, and bring cost effectiveness to your company. So I don't know. I always thought that was something really cool that as a shipper, that you don't hear a lot as a carrier or broker. You don't hear those inside things on the supply chain side.
Oh my gosh, yeah, you're right, man. Getting the stuff to we may hold you up at the loading because we scheduled something 2 days before the material was even here to be produced. It just has a due date, and you're banking on trying to be a good shipper with your partner carriers to fulfill the demand that your customer has, when the stuff that you need to make it isn't even there yet. Mm-hmm. And what do? You're at the mercy of your supply chain. But when everybody else is at the mercy of their supply chain, and we're in a market like we have currently, you end up with loads that fail. The cool thing is, right now, it doesn't matter. There's 10 more loads out there for every truck, or 32, or whatever the current roll is. But you don't want to become that guy who drops a load in the middle of this kind of market because you can't get another truck in, and you find them another load. You find them something. You give them a ton of money to stay until you can make it. But yeah, that's definitely a problem.
And that's one big thing, I would say to any, brokers or carriers out there is right now the customers are hurting, your customers are hurting a little bit, especially depending on their commodity. But, don't be afraid to ask for those things, especially when you're dealing with an owner operator. He gets there, he's calling, he's all pissed off, I can't sit here. You told me this is going to be ready, and they'll even go as far, you lied to me. We didn't lie to you, but, go let them know exactly what's happening. And a lot of times they're going to be willing to pay. And it's not like you're asking them for money. It's if anything, you're kind of saving them, right? Because yeah, they have to pay you maybe $300 to lay over or something, but like that's compared to getting another truck in there. I mean, it's something that's different. And those are still solutions and innovation, problem solving you could bring to them, even though it costs them a little bit. It actually saves them really in the long term.
You may not get a truck tomorrow.
They still have customers they have to fulfill commitments to.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's where that relationship piece comes to, where you can feel comfortable as a shipper, as a broker, or a carrier to talk about those things. Because I know we have our own agendas of what we're trying to get done, whether that's get loaded, get on the road. Shippers have different things coming at them too. I try to tell my team that, I mean, Tony, Kip, how much of your day is really spent on shipping, or more so you have so many other things? You have reporting and production and customer service, and it's like 1/10 of your job, right?
I was going to say 10%.
That's what I tell my team. It's about 10%. So
yeah, and that 10% is usually after hours.
Yeah. And that again, I touched on it last time I posted. That's why they don't care what you could come in here and say, I got all this technology and I got all this. They don't care. Like most of them are not looking for another carrier or shipper because they don't have time, or they've got other things that make a bigger difference right now at this point in time. So that's why I talked about just that relationship of getting to talk with people, getting to know them. And then when they realize that you've got some knowledge and they trust you, that way, now they're saying, okay, cool, just do it, take it, got it, because it is 10% of it. But it's got to have that. They're not just going to like, hey, you know what? I'm going to give you a shot. And I'm going to work with you every day, and we're going to talk. Let's get on the phone at 5 p.m. and go over how your day went. And
every one of your rates we're going to talk about too on the spot bid board, yeah. And we're going to go over that and make sure you're comfortable to quote me. Mm-hmm. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, and then they look at the spot bids now too. I've got my guy, and it's working. It's say, hey, send your rates in. They're going to pull all the rates in. They got all these shipments. They're going to look at the lowest one, and yes, relationships matter if it's within close. But right now they're so busy. But every time you bid, follow up with an email so you're still in front of their face. So like, they may be working on something else and be like, oh, I got to get that. And then there's an email from TJ saying, hey, I just bid all 3 of those at $12.50. Let me know if I got to go a little bit lower. God, F it. I'm just going to give it to just, those are things you can do to get yourself a little bit ahead here. But with how customers are handling it, but it's tough because, I mean, Tony, as well as I do, you always talk about how you like to have like kind of a verbal rate agreement with a carrier, right? And you stick to that, which helped them during COVID, right? Helps them get through COVID. But the guys that were maybe taking you out to lunch or whatever it is during COVID, because you're helping them, are now nowhere to be seen. And you get that on both ends too, right? I mean, you got customers that are just pounding you like, you need to stick to your contracted rate. You committed to this and that and this, and you're saying, hey, with capacity where it is and this and that, I gotta, could we get a little bit more? If you're asking whatever, and they're a lot less likely, because you see it on both sides then. When really during COVID they were going to carriers and asking for them to lower their rates, mm-hmm. and just expecting it. So it's such a give and take on that. But having a relationship and trust allows you to have those conversations without somebody getting, pissed off or just thinking you're trying to scheme them or whatever it is.
All right. I haven't personally asked anybody to lower their rates during the COVID slowdown.
Yeah,
but
that's something
now
that should remember.
When I need a truck, they're there most of the time.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Kip, what did you find when it came to when you had some ebb and flow and capacity? When it came to certain carriers, did you find that happening, or were you great?
Well, we have a facility in Brownsville, Texas. So every fall when onions start coming ripe and are shipped, the freight capacity coming out of Brownsville just tanks. We tried to work with carriers that we always worked with, and we developed a relationship with some local carriers down there that would hold equipment for us. But there again, it's about, working with folks and being honest and fair about it, and if you're telling them you need 5 or 10 trucks a week, and if you aren't hitting it, it's like letting them know for whatever reason we aren't gonna. I'm only using 7, so find something else to do for the other 3, and I'll get by with 7.
Right.
But you have to work with people. I mean, you got to be honest and fair with them, because first time you get caught, even with the smallest lie out there, you aren't going to get squat out of them.
Yep. And I'd have to say, Kip, I think you'd agree, but onion season brings everyone to tears. Am I correct?
That's a good dad joke.
Yeah, it is a bad joke, but it's true.
I thank you. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is that open conversation, and I've talked to multiple people that try to hide it and come up with excuses. I got COVID or whatever. The truck's not showing up, and they're trying to recover it. But just have a conversation, with them and say, hey, just for the next 2-3 weeks, I've done that with multiple customers, and they're so much more willing to understand that, and because they know you're not lying. I'm like, listen, I just don't have the capacity. I had other customers ramp up quicker than you. That's not your fault, right? But I got to work on that. Now, if I could just take 2 of the shipments I committed to of the 5, or if I could get a higher rate so I could deadhead a guy over there, whatever it is, for the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, just give me 2 weeks to really work on this. I'm going to go to work for you and try to build that capacity back to where it is. We've got recruiting going on. We've got all this stuff working towards it. They are so much more willing to do that, because the last thing they want to do is pull you off and go find another carrier, go through that whole thing. They don't know if they're going to be any good or not. And they get it. They understand. It's just, you're not being transparent. You're coming up with all these other reasons besides just the fact that you don't have the capacity, right? And the service isn't there. So let them know that. Let them know you're not happy with it. I love being able to service a customer. I hate that. I don't want service to go down and overcommit. What can we do? Let's come up with a plan. Put them on the spot. Let them talk with you and come up with a plan together.
Mm-hmm. So what do you guys think as far as the increases that you've seen across the board? If you took all that, what are you thinking that looks like to your budget? And what does that do to your role? Like what happens at the end of the day? Are you guys getting, having the ability to push more of that to your customers too, and kind of share that? Like, what does that look like for a shipper?
Well, I can tell you, we don't have any control over pricing when it comes to product or any of that. So I hope that our leadership team at any place that anybody's shipping anything is in tune with their shipping guy, their shipping girl, whoever, so that they know that they're going to need to adjust to accommodate this. Because I mean, freight's like up 100% year over year. You've got to do something, because somebody in my situation has an impossible task, especially if you're tied to like percent of sales, which especially
hold on.
Ratio, and that ratio is out of whack because sales are insane.
You cut out for a minute. Can you say that last little bit again?
A lot of places tie their budget to like a percent of their revenue, percent of sales. So if that number gets out of whack, somebody in my position doesn't have a chance to hit their targets or their KPIs that they're supposed to hit. It's a balancing game all the time. You're always fighting that gap to stay between sales and budget. Like everybody fights that battle.
Mm-hmm.
So you just really have to be in tune with management. You have to be in tune with your carrier partners. You have to be in tune and contact and great communication with the whole supply chain upstream from you, downstream from you.
Do we have anybody that wants to come on and ask a question, or any question that's out there that you guys have? Let us know. But I know like Tony said, a lot of it's that trickle down effect, on the customer side. And I'd also suggest as best you could, and I've been lucky to have a Tony or a Kip to be able to pick their brain, but learn about the customer side, learn about it, learn how it works. It really helps you out when it comes to conversations and maybe even, how to navigate, business and new business that you have with them. But that trickle down effect, from what, an executive is saying to what the sales guys are telling the customers, to what purchasing is. And Kip, I think you had a little bit more control when it came to, purchasing and things like that as well. But, when it's divided all the way down the chain, it's where you kind of run into those issues. But you know, if you learn it, you can kind of A, find their pain points, but also B, maybe find even some solutions to help them out when it comes to
Creative
that.
solutions, something we haven't thought of yet. You know, sometimes we get so busy in the daily routine, the rut, just getting through the day, getting to the end, that there's a lot of times I don't have time to come up with an original idea. I think about it on Saturday afternoon when I'm at the grocery store with my wife or something at a football game, and something will pop into my head, and
What's
TJ will call me.
Yeah, or I'll call you. We talk freight sometimes. Okay, so let's go to this. And Kip, we'll start with you. What do you as a shipper, what you're seeing, what you're hearing, what are you looking at, you know, future wise here coming up, you know, rate wise, whether it's economy, whatever you're seeing that's going to play a role here moving forward?
Well, okay, so these things ebb and flow. You know, the capacity tightens up, the prices go up. You know, there's more capacity, the freight comes down. So I think you just have to be flexible about it. And as you're putting your budget numbers together in those things, you got to be talking to those carriers that you know and work with on a regular basis to determine what they're seeing out there, and what's going to happen. And then, you know, you can do a little bit of field testing, but, you know, honestly, it's there again, you got to ship product, okay? Or you got to get the product shipped to you. So, you know, what are you going to do? I mean, you try to hand some of it off to your supply base, but my experience, that ends up being more of a nightmare than it does just having the line item of freight on the budget. So,
What I
say in there, when you have the supplier paying the freight to your dock, well, that affects piece price. Well, then if the freight goes up and they want to increase their piece price because the freight went up, then your commercial team's all up in arms because how am I supposed to take that to my buyer? Well, it's the reality of the situation. It's either coming out of our bottom line or theirs. So figure it out.
How are we supposed to take that to your buyer?
Yeah. Yeah. When they don't like that idea.
Yeah. And that ebb and flow, it's funny. We saw it a lot. That's why, you know, you being on the carrier side, how many carriers were complaining and whining because it's, you know, rates are up. You know, guys knows a guy that has a truck, hadn't ran in a while. Oh, get the truck. Let's get going. You know, let's get into the business now. We can make money. You know, they're not ready. They don't know what they're doing yet necessarily. And as soon as the rates go down, capacity's up now, right? There's more trucks on the road, rates go down. And now it's everybody else's fault. We need regulated rates because I can't run and make money, even though you.
How many of these guys that are out there getting into it or adding 5 trucks real quick are going to be here in 18 months?
I'll tell you, in 3 months they'll have another sign on the side of their truck, and they've got about 10 of them printed out. Probably they bought about 4 different MC numbers. They're gonna run out, make the quick money, and then they'll be the first ones complaining when the market.
Do your homework.
Mm-hmm. But Kit, what do you see? I mean, from your moving forward here, just in current right now, like what you see, just because like we're coming out of a pandemic, we had an election. What is your idea of what we're gonna see coming up here in the next couple months?
Well, one, I think that the economy's posed, from what I'm seeing in the marketplace, to continue at the pace or even accelerate a little more than what it is right now. Not exponentially, but I think it's going to go up another 5 to 10% over where it's at right now, just in manufacturing. Heavy truck, you know, they're both or all of our customers have announced their build rate increases for September and October. So I think it'll run through the election. I think, and typically in heavy truck, late December, January, early February are really the slow periods of the year consistently. So, but I think the economy on the whole is going to be fine. I think that, you know, depending on what happens with the virus, and, you know, yeah, I really think come November, the whole virus thing's going to calm down a little bit. And until COVID-20 comes out, or whatever they call the next variety.
Yeah.
I know what you're thinking.
And
you're right. That's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah, a whole nother discussion. But, and then I think probably post whenever this gets a little more realistic. I mean, I just had the opportunity to talk to some healthcare workers, and, you know, more than one of them said the H1N1 virus was way worse than this one.
Oh yeah.
And you know, so there's going to be some letdown whenever this thing calms down, and, you know, things normalize a little bit. So while we're watching spring football.
Oh,
hey,
yeah.
I'll take fall and spring football. That's awesome.
Yeah.
You know, Kip, what really upset me was Tony lives up South Bend. I thought he was a Notre Dame fan because he used to work there, goes to games and stuff. Comes out today and lets me know that he's a Purdue fan because he saw you went to Purdue. So now you got another.
I figured you had to be a good guy.
Him also, you know,
Unbelievable.
bleeding that gold and black, baby.
Boiler up.
Boiler up.
Whatever. I want to hear it. Good stuff. Good stuff. Tony, what are you seeing over in the Northwest Indiana market?
Steel,
whatever. I don't know. What do you ship? You ship steel? You tell me. You're the shipper.
I used to ship steel.
Nervous one, but he's a shipper.
Yeah, very nervous. What's going on right now? Same thing's going on everywhere else. We're looking to stay away
not
from
now. What are you seeing moving forward? What do you guys have been hearing? Moving forward, market wise, what you're doing?
It looks to be continued growth for the next year or two. I don't see any slowdown whatsoever. I don't see any. You can't just buy a truck and put it on the road tomorrow. You got to train somebody. You got to hire somebody. You got to vet somebody to put it in the truck. You got to order the truck. Somebody has to build the truck. You're not going to just go down to the dealer and pick one out and take it home. I mean, it takes a long time to put a truck on the road. I don't know. I don't think the capacity is going to go away tomorrow. Everybody can go out and add 5 trucks, and we'll still won't have enough trucks right now.
Yep.
I think it's just it'll take time. I was watching a video on LinkedIn from, who's that stats guy? Kyle
Taylor. That's my boy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Something they were talking about durable goods being just while everything else, service industry, was in the toilet.
Mm-hmm. Well, is he frozen? Oh no, you're there. Sorry, you're going in and out. No, I mean you said service industry. You're kind of cutting in and out there.
It was cutting. The service industry was going in the tank, but the durable goods were amazingly high. It was a record height of shipments. So you're just going to keep. Yeah, Kyle Lintner.
Kyle Lintner?
Yeah.
I thought you meant Kyle Taylor on Freight Waves.
No.
Okay.
K ratio.
Gotcha.
It was a great video. Thanks to Andrew Teal for turning me on to that. Anyway, yeah, I don't see any capacity loosening up anytime soon. We're going to have a tight market for the next 6 months, 12 months at least. So if you're going to go in there and talk about freight price, cost and contract agreements and increases, just remember it'll swing back the other way next year or the year after. It always does. We just had a real big swing in a real short amount of time.
Do you guys think that shippers eventually will go to the concept of taking like a sonar mentality of pricing and bringing that to your daily or maybe even quarterly adjustments of rates? So it's not, so it's my turn, it's your turn.
They already are. I know that for sure. I mean, if I see one more email that says mini bid on it, It's like, you guys are a little late to the game here. I mean, they get it. They're trying to get people contracted and work down right now, but it's a little bit late now. But I think as you see that, and I remember I was listening to a podcast in the I think it was the CEO of Transplace, and Transplace is known for being one of the better 3PLs of driving, getting rates down and finding the, working to the core carriers. And he said, you're going to see it in the future. He called it, and you're going to see it even more now. And I do see it, is going from those yearly or, every 2-year RFPs to, quarterly, monthly, weekly RFPs. And the only way to do that is to have that type of information. I think, to be up on the market and the predictions, because before it was just, bid and pray. And now I think it's more, strategic when it comes to the bidding.
I think that would be a really good perspective for people, because we keep talking about your turn, my turn. And I think that would make it more even keeled across the board. I think brokers would do well with that. I think trucking companies would do well with that. And there would be the ability to adjust, and then budgets would be more realistic, I think.
But how do you do that? I mean, how do you really realize, how do you take that to the board, the downtown that are telling you to cut your freight spend when it's only going up? How do you take that to them when they take it to you and they say that in the market in March and April, hey, cut your rates because the rates are going down? Well, how do you do that and maintain a relationship with a carrier that is going to be reliable when the capacity tightens up like it does now?
Well,
I mean, that's just pushing us all into the spot market.
I think, no, I don't know if it technically is, because if you're allowing during certain times that there's kind of a percentage increase that you can talk about, it's talking about locking something in for a quarter, locking something in for 6 months. And it's going to be a nerve-wracking thing to try for the first 6 months, I think. But I think every company involved with it has to understand that everyone's in these businesses to make money. So it can't just be, this is where I am for the whole year, and it's just negotiated for the quarter and then try it out that way.
I've always had a ginormous spreadsheet with my lanes down one side and carriers across the top, and they would each bid whatever they wanted, and then I'd acknowledge it with an email. And if they got a lane that they wanted to adjust, they send me an email. I acknowledge the email, I update the rate. That's what it is. So you're in total control of your rate. But then I can filter each lane top to bottom, and then I call until I have capacity. And I guarantee you, every time I hit below average of that column, every single time. But then I can provide an average for sales to quote freight.
Yep, that's what it is. It's about bringing something to the board, bringing something showing that, and even having maybe some backup, some peer reviewed stuff that's showing how realistic this data is and how it actually works, and then also bringing a solution, because
right,
you always bring a problem. That's one thing I remember running into when we first kind of restructured here, is like, if you don't bring a solution, nobody really listens much to the problem. And if you bring a solution, but you don't touch on why you're doing it and what the problem was, they don't tend to listen to the solution either. So it is, I think you'd have to put time. I mean, shippers, and again, you guys talk about how you don't have much time when it comes to shipping, but you see a lot more supply chain analysts, a lot more supply chain consultants, a lot more of, that type of thing that can sit down and do that and bring that to the table, because it could end up saving you a ton of money and a ton of, when it comes to carriers. But knowing those things, and the first post that ever got me, like, during the COVID thing, and I was, I had known Cassandra a little bit and had gotten on, but I had like 18,000 views or something on a post, and I thought, because we're so automotive based, I just thought it was like common knowledge. But I put out there, one of my first ever real posts on LinkedIn was that 300,000 plus trucks flood the market when the big three, Ford, GM, and Chrysler, when they shut down. That's 300,000 trucks that flood the market. Now, they don't know, a lot of that is so contracted. It's either really, really contracted full truckload, or it's expedite stuff. And they're so full contracted, they don't know really how to work other resources, how to work a board. They go to DAT and they just take whatever rate just to keep moving, because they don't know when it's going to start up, and they know they can go back to their lane. Well, that pisses all the other carriers off that are out there now because the market's, you know, now the capacity's so up. You got 3 shut down with all the other automotive suppliers shutting down during that. That's 600,000 trucks that flood the market. Right now, I'll tell you that the automotive industry is absolutely booming. I mean, expedites are just through the roof. All the contracted lanes, they expect you to hit every single one of them, and they've even got extras. So that's 600,000 trucks that were out in the market during COVID are now back on automotive, and there's even more being added to automotive because they're ramping up so fast.
Yep.
And those are things that if you can follow and keep tuned to it. Now, I was helped and blessed because it's a niche that I'm in, but that's what the benefit of getting in and learning what the market and what things are looking like in different, you know, niches and silos can benefit your business, whether you're a carrier or a shipper.
Yep. I like the route guide thing that I created for lanes because it allows the carrier that control to change, but that doesn't work, and it's not scalable to a major shipper. It's scalable to, you know, 50, 100, 150 truckloads a day max before it becomes a ginormous burden to just upkeep. But it allows the carrier that feedback. They can change their rate whenever they want to. I'll update the spreadsheet at all whenever. It doesn't, as long as I have time and acknowledge the email, we're at the new rate, everything tendered after that. Then you have an average for each column that you can send to your sales team, and here's your freight guide for pricing. And then when you see something change, you can help them change. You can help them sell the changing market.
And how is that then with reoccurring work that your salespeople have sold? Did they change the price to the customer, or is that more of just an internal?
Usually it's a line item.
Okay.
It's X plus freight, whatever the sales ratio or percent or formula is that they sell their product, whether it's pounds or pieces or whatever that is, plus freight.
Kip, what did you know, with what you were doing and how you're doing it, supplying trucks, right? Heavy truck. Obviously, your commodity and what you're shipping is actually affected by the trucking industry. And with how many trucks are in the automotive industry and pushing, especially in this area, did you guys follow that a lot? I mean, what did you guys follow to stay out ahead of, you know, what data were you given to stay out ahead of things and keep your pricing where competitive?
Well, first of all, our outbound freight was mostly all intersite. Okay. So, our customer shipments were customer directed, and they were using, or they still are, Ryder Logistics and the 3PLs to manage their freight. So, so that side of it, we didn't have much control over as far as rates or whatever. Bigger problem there was with the e-logs and all those requirements. Really made it tough to stage and prep a load. And then after you got it all staged, prep, ready to go, and it's sitting on your dock right in your way, you get a notice from the carrier that, oh, our driver ran out of hours. Mm-hmm. And, we'll be in there tomorrow morning to pick it up. And, but so on that side of it, we didn't have a lot of control over the rates or who the carriers were. And on the things we did control there again, we developed that relationship with that company out of defiance, and then we just abused, and worked with them. I mean, we probably utilized, I would say, somewhere around 60 to 70% of their equipment.
How and you know what? That's funny you say that. So, and our safety guy. So our safety guy was with North American Van Lines was headquarters here in Fort Wayne for a long time. Huge. Yep. And our old office actually was over there, but he used to work for them for a long time. Very, very knowledgeable. And he gets so pissed off because he knows what the shippers are doing when those trailers are not unloaded, or when they load a little bit on there. And how much, when you had that staged and you got it all staged, did you use that guy's trailer to get it off your dock and use it as your, warehousing or your storage?
We only had a few of those carriers where we were able to arrange drop trailers to use. They literally did not have a truck or a trailer there. And then that freight would be there sitting in our way on the dock until they showed up.
Gotcha.
So,
I mean, we're seeing it where, and I think ours is a service, but also high production, where they'll load like half of a shipment onto our trailer. It's not even ours. We'll have a guy going to pick up an empty and it's half full, and they can't explain it. Or we'll drop a trailer off and at a drop shipment for a certain customer, and it's 2 weeks, 3 weeks till it's unloaded. Then you go in to get it, it's only half unloaded, and then the guy goes in the next week and it's 3/4 unloaded when it was just half unloaded, which means they put more on there. So it's a game you're seeing a lot more of. I think that's a great point, because they need drop trailers and they need the space, because they don't have as much time, when it comes to staging, and they may not have the space either.
yeah.
So
So
a good question in the comments. Good question in the comments. Are you seeing a lot of CPU customers flipping that back over to prepaid shipper source transportation due to capacity? My answer to that is heck yes. Every day I'm providing quotes with our partner carriers to lanes that we regularly service that are CPU, that they are either bouncing the freight price off of us because they probably don't have a freight person that understands where the market's going and what it's been doing right now, or they're just making sure that their carrier isn't giving them a load and not a physical load. I don't know. What do you think? Are you seeing that, Kip?
Yeah, I mean, well, that the carrier I talked about that we used and abused quite a bit. One of the things is, if and went through this with TJ when he first started working for Circle. If somebody would come in and actually quote me a lower rate than what I had with him, all I had to do was call him, and he would lower his rate, 2-3 points below that, just to hang on to the freight, because we had such a big share of his business. But coming into this time of the year, which would be our budgeting time, that then we would I would use some of those carriers that might call me and see what they'd quote me on a particular lane, and then go back to him to work on the budget. Or if he come in this year and said, I got to raise my rates, we'd do the same thing there. I might test it with somebody that's reaching out to me and see where his rate's at, and then, use that for the foundation to go back up when they're doing the budget and say, it's a real thing. We're going to have to deal with it.
That's interesting.
I'm not seeing where these questions are, Tony.
YouTube chat.
Oh, he's probably getting texts.
No, YouTube chat.
I don't see that.
That was my wife and daughter in the background, by the way. I think they're still back there.
Oh, my sons keep coming in because I'm in his room.
He knows he's famous.
That's
right
my
now.
neighbor. Yeah, there's my wife. That's my daughter. He's actually my neighbor.
Hi, neighbor. Hi, wife, daughter.
Well, I mean, we are pretty much at our time, though. So I thought that was great dialogue. And I actually learned, I was like the quietest I've ever been on the show, which is awesome, because I was listening to you guys. It's so cool to hear that perspective from both. And Kip, I loved everything that you had to contribute to. It's so cool. Thank you.
Thanks, Kip.
I've accumulated that wealth of, however you want to term it, over a long number of years. It's like one time I had a team of drivers expediting freight to Navistar in Garland, Texas, and we lost track of their GPS, or the carrier did. And then about 3 days later, they come back to me. The Texas State Police found an abandoned on a interstate around Dallas, and the GPS had been cut, and they ran the truck out of fuel and left it set. So
We see it all. We get to see
Oh.
it all in this industry.
But I will say one thing about Kip is what I've touched on before is get to know a shipper, get to know a customer, talk with them a lot, and learn from them. Because my first ever sales trip, I got into logistics. Of course, my neighbor, the director of supply chain, I tell my owner about it. He's like, let's get him out to Applebee's. So we go to Applebee's, we sit down, and Kip says, all I've got is this lane. I don't really have much. I've got this one lane. I've got a guy on it. If you can get better price than that, let me know. And so, my owner's talking to him, and they're about the same age. They're talking about, they know this and that. They've been around a long time, and I'm listening. And we get in, I get in the car with him to drive home, and I go, man, I can't believe he's only got that much. He goes, what are you talking about, TJ? He goes, that's not all he had. He goes, he told us he had X amount of freight spend a year, and he just gave us the lanes and said he was at this rate. That's only like 2% of it. I go, he just needed rates on, and that's what made me realize, like, shippers and customers have a certain thing that they need, and they're going to try and find it. They're not going to sit down. He's not going to sit down and say, I've got all this stuff. What do you want? Pick from it. Right? It's
enough time in the day.
It's learning that. It just opened my eyes. Like my owner, he just knew it. He just knew it. He's like, yep, he's only hurting here in this area, and that's what he needs. And so
we have a leadership development program, and I have a guy who's been with our company for a couple of years who got into this, and he's been with me the last 2 weeks, and he is adamantly opposed to getting into the business.
You're scaring him.
He doesn't want anything to do with shipping. Yeah. It's been so crazy. I think we scared him off, and he's great. He's smart. He'll probably be my boss someday. He's got the talent, but this is a bad time to be learning this business because it's not for everyone, but it'll turn back around.
Well, right. You know what I tell people, Tony, is you got to be a certain kind of sick person to be in this, and you either love it or you need to move on and go do something else.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Very true.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you guys, everybody. It was a great show. We appreciate your involvement, and we look forward to hopefully getting you back on sometime soon, Kip, and of course, Tony, you're stuck with us. So
I'm stuck. Lucky to be.
Well, we'll see what we can do.
All right.
Thanks.
Well, everyone have a
Thanks
great
having
rest
you, Kip.
of the week. We'll see you next.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks having you, Kip.
Bye.
Hold your own beer.
Nice